When we look at the Auditor General's report and what their perspective has been on things, when they looked at Transport Canada's SMS implementation, they accurately describe it as a complete replacement of the current system of safety oversight, not an additional layer, as is continuously proposed by transport personnel. It's a partnership with the airlines. They allow the aviation companies to determine acceptable level of risk for themselves. They're determining this level of risk for the public. And in return, Transport Canada backs off on the regulatory oversight. In that Auditor General's report, you will see a systematic process of offloading to the industry, and whereby within the next 18 to 24 months, the complete aviation industry will be offloaded to the commercial interests to make the decisions as to what the acceptable level of risk is for the public. And Transport Canada will simply sit back and say they have a system, they are now responsible. I find it astounding that, in fact, the legislation hasn't actually been passed, but yet the implementation is many years underway. We look at business aviation as an example. If you want to look at a clear example of what's happened and how this is really rolled out, look at what's happened with the business aviation sector under Part 604 of the Canadian Aviation Regulations. They were given ability to oversee themselves in their own operations in 2003. The minister announced the ability for the Canadian Business Aviation Association to issue private operator certificates, which was previously a ministerial responsibility, and to oversee that whole sector of the industry. They announced it at the end of 2005. The original document that was used to, or white paper to study the issue, was entitled Industry Self-Regulation. When the announcement came from the minister in the end of 2005 to announce the implementation of this program, it had now morphed into a title that said that this program was the implementation of safety management systems for the business aviation sector. If you want to see what the real methodology is about what's going on, as my esteemed colleague from the Teamsters mentioned, this is self-regulation. This is the companies taking over for themselves to make their own determinations as to whether they're compliant with safety and or government requirements. The audit, the other thing I wanted to mention was, although they took over in 2003 and it was announced publicly in 2007, coincidentally, it wasn't until the very day that their chief executive officer was appearing before the parliamentary committee in 2007 that an audit was actually constituted by Transport Canada. And when questioned in front of the committee, the CEO said, well, in fact, the transport auditors are in our offices today, interestingly enough. And I'll speak more later about what the results of that audit were, but they certainly weren't a glowing endorsement of what was going on. Well, in fact, Transport did give them the glowing endorsement. In fact, it wasn't consistent with the facts, but they got the endorsement nevertheless. The Safety Board is looking into several accidents where they believe that safety management systems are a component of the system that allowed the accident to occur, and the retraction of regulatory oversight from the industry. Transport Canada is using SMS to frustrate inspections and hide safety information. Incidents related are discovered, referred, reported to Transport Canada. People like Mr. Tafel or his colleagues who may phone up Transport Canada and report about a company. If that company has a safety management system, an email will simply be sent to the company and said, you have an SMS, please handle this report in accordance with your safety management system. The answer comes back, thank you very much, Transport Inspector, we'll handle it in accordance with our safety management system. That is the end of it. There is no investigation or follow-up. In fact, we've had incidents where our inspectors, in spite of the confidentiality agreements that some of them have been asked to sign, but according to the minister, they now don't have to, even when Transport Canada inspectors have phoned up companies and said, listen, that's unacceptable, we want to follow up on this particular occurrence in more detail, the company principals have contacted senior management in Transport Canada and said, one of your inspectors is asking for this information. We're handling it in accordance with our SMS. The inspector was told to cease and desist his inquiries and that he had no entitlement to further bother the company to inquire about information about possible allegations of concern to them. Our concern is that should legislation reconstitute itself in Parliament, that that even though there was some amendments that thankfully the Standing Committee on Transportation Infrastructure, I'm not getting the title correct, I'm looking at an acronym, SCOTIC, and if that legislation is reconstituted, that it incorporate those amendments, but also that we take an opportunity here to have a look at this again. There is no doubt that traditional oversight is basically being shut down. Significant portions of the traditional oversight have already been shut down, and is well documented. Those are the facts. The National Audit Program has been shut down, and there are documents available showing that Transport was aware that there would be increased risk to the industry and the traveling public for doing that, and they decided to do it anyways in the interest of promoting SMS. The secrecy involved, the confidentiality agreements that inspectors were asked to sign, it's unprecedented, really. This is supposed to be flight safety information that we're all supposed to be sharing to the greater good of the industry. I totally understand the concerns that not only our pilot members would have about not having their personal names splashed over the headlines, but they also feel that it's very important that the stories about the incidents come out and be properly looked at from all aspects so that the safety information can be brought out and shared openly with all other constituent interested parties. On the issue of the confidentiality agreements, I just find it incredible that Transport Management was aware of it at the time that it occurred, and it took 2 years for the minister to finally come out, a new minister finally come out and say, no, that's not on. Much to the consternation of senior Transport Management, by the way, because their initial reaction was, well, those agreements are simply not required. Well, what does not required mean? Does it mean that it's okay to have those agreements? Does it mean that we as Transport Canada would ensure that if one of our inspectors found something that they would take no action on it, or refer the information back to the company, or admonish them for having taken proprietary company information off company premises because of their what they saw as their fiduciary duty to the public safety? Those two words, not required, give me great cause for concern. They basically revalidate our concern for whistleblowers, not only for the employees in the industry, for the traveling public, but also for the public servants that are charged with trying to do this job that their management doesn't really want them to do.